Hey there, we're the Westlaw Pirates and welcome to the show. We're here to share our thoughts on Northwestern athletics and college sports with thoughts and analysis from the visceral to the statistical. We run our tailgate with the red pirate flag flying high above as we give no quarter, especially the fourth. I'm Sam Walter.
I'm John Lacombe.
And I'm Eric Scousbo.
Well, guys, it was a chilly weekend here in Chicago, at least. Got a little warmer today. I'm not sure if it was just the weather changing or if just Ty Berry draining threes just warmed up the atmosphere that much more. But my goodness, he was just white hot tonight as Northwestern beats Indiana 79-70 in very fascinating game. I'm looking forward to diving into it. I know we've had a couple weeks off. We'll jump in, talk some hoops here in a sec. But after the past few weeks, we were developing a new segment that I like to call "How Did the Refs Screw Us Tonight?" Unfortunately, I don't know if we're going to be able to really get into that segment tonight, but definitely a little bit in arrears. We've got some more stuff to talk about in the past few games, but let's start with tonight. Let's start with this game against Indiana. Just a tremendous second half for the Cats, especially after when I flipped it on after I got home from work and got dinner going. I turned the game on, and that's exactly when Indiana started their 18-2 run. So I take responsibility for that personally.
Yeah, it's on you. Yeah, I think this was a game where both teams were absolutely white hot from three, and it certainly went up and down. And yeah, there was that 18-2 Hoosier run, and then there was when the Hoosiers really made us sweat late and almost erased a second deficit late on in the game. But at the end of the day, we all know this is going to be remembered as the Ty effing Berry game. And this was a game that there is no guy who deserves a performance like this more. We all know what Ty has meant to this team over the past 4 years. We all know the funk that he has been in this season, that kind of culminating in him coming off the bench, right, and Sharvino getting the starts over this past 3-game stretch. And to see him come out and just be absolutely unconscious in this game. 7 for 10, massive. I mean, down the stretch, it felt like he could
7 for 10 from three.
Three.
Let's be clear.
Right. I mean, felt like he could not miss. Just with the place going absolutely bananas, the team 100% behind him. And it just made you feel so good. And I think quickly we all realized how hot he was. And then especially during that 18-2 run when he only had one attempt during that stretch was kind of like, please do not let us blow this game for Ty Berry because no one has earned it more than this guy has.
Is 7 threes a high watermark for him?
Oh, gosh. It has to be, right? I mean, like, there aren't too many Northwestern Wildcats who've made more than 7 in a game. I have to think.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so good to finally see him feel comfortable like this and be able to hit, the open looks, the looks coming off of a screen, the catch and shoot. Like this was a vintage Ty Berry game, and I feel like I've been waiting all year to see him find some comfort, and hopefully this is a turning point for him. That knee, I feel like every game that Northwestern has played in the last month and a half has been color commentated by Robbie Hummel, and as a guy who was a shooter who had, if I'm remembering correctly, some knee issues as well, like he talks every game about Ty Berry and how hard it is coming off the injury and what that does to a shooter when they can't shoot all summer long, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we have seen just a nightmare year from Ty. And then to have a game like this, and yeah, John, you're spot on. Like, thank God they came through and won this game. It would have been a travesty to waste a performance like he had. But minus a couple of stretches and Indiana hitting a couple of, desperation threes at the end as they were trying to claw back into it. Northwestern was I'd say had the upper hand for most of this game. And it was a must win. We're going to get into some of the recent up and down that the team has had. It was a must-win for them at home. They looked great, not just Berry, but Martinelli was doing good stuff. Brooks took over in the second half. Leach hit three threes in 90 seconds, and then eventually I want to talk about Matty Nicholson, but I'll pause here as we continue to laud the performance from Barry.
I can confirm 7 threes is his career high. He had a couple games of 6 threes. The loss to Purdue last year was one of those, but yeah, 7 made threes is a career high for Ty Berry.
I'm so glad you checked on that too, particularly because it serves as like a visceral reminder. Not that we really needed one, but it's like Ty Berry's been delivering in big moments for this team for so long. And I feel like that there was a point this season where like the performance was so down for so long that it was kind of like we all kind of had to accept, okay. And we talked about it even on the Lost Pod. You know, I mean, Scuzz talking about it, like Sharvino, like you've got to up his minutes and stuff because he's one of the best 3-point shooters on the team right now, and et cetera, et cetera. And it's like it was such a bummer that in the moment you just kind of have to move on from. And again, like there'll be a whole section later on where we'll talk about things that suck this season that Northwestern has nonetheless had to move on from. But it just to remember, like, this is a guy who has been such a key cog in so many important Northwestern basketball teams, and he just hasn't had his mojo for a while this season. And then to see him come through, and it's funny, I think Sam, you pointed out that he hit 7 threes, 8 field goals, so 7 of those field goals were threes, and yet I can vividly remember the one that wasn't a three because it was this awesome, aggressive floater in the lane, the kind of shot that you see Martinelli make again and again in games. And that was just the mentality that Barry had. And at the same time, for a guy who was unconscious shooting the ball in this game, he never really did like a full heat check. There was one moment where he got the ball just past the Northwestern logo and almost squared up for a second. And it was like every Northwestern fan in the building was giving you the green light to take that rashly irresponsible three if you wanted it. Like you had a green light, but he didn't. He basically played within himself and yet absolutely hit everything that he took. And again, like we've talked about before that this is famously like a really bad 3-point shooting team on the season this season, and that's the Achilles heel of the team, or certainly the offensive Achilles heel of the team, and that's known and that other teams game plan for it. And we've talked about the fact that when you can actually get a performance like this from Barry in that home environment, it ought to be near impossible for Northwestern to win. And, it was like there were nervy moments as that was very much put to the test today, but at the end of the day, like it went how it should. When the team is shooting like this in front of that home crowd, they should be just about impossible to beat.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned Sharvino and upping his minutes because for the last 4 games, including tonight, Sharvino started, or at least that's like I missed the very beginning of our game, so maybe I'm wrong.
He started again, yeah.
Yeah. So he's and we all clocked it with the Michigan State game of, oh wow, they've decided to bring Barry off the bench. He actually, he performed pretty well against Maryland. And whether this is just to shake up the mentality or to ensure that we are getting some Sharvino minutes, if it changes the way that the other team is kind of fixing their defense or focusing on Barry, et cetera, hopefully this is, again, a path and a pattern to more consistency from him as we go forward. Because we've seen, I don't think he was great against Michigan. I mean, he was 2 of 3, he hit 12 points against Michigan. So this is 3 games in a row now that he's gone for double digits. And that's a pretty damn good sign that Ty is coming back into his own.
Yeah, for sure. I think, and especially since I think like that's a thing, like almost for the entire season, because Ty has really been, like we said, in this funk pretty much the entire year, that you have Martinelli, who has been, as we all know, incandescent. He scored 18 points tonight.
Leading the conference in scoring.
Yes.
Yeah, right. He scores 18 tonight and is below his season average, which is leading the Big Ten. And doing it all in classic Martinelli ways, man. The floaters, you all know, right? Like he gets into the paint and launches that floater, and you know it's going in every single time. It's like an impossibly soft touch. And then, of course, we know Brooks is Brooks. Like I was just looking at, I think ESPN was doing their top 50 players in the nation, and Brooks was one of the lists that just missed the cut. He's viewed as one of the best basketball players in the country. So, and then you have a game like this where Ty Berry reminds you what he's capable of, and then you're like, well, damn, we sure have a lot of great basketball players on this team. And when everything is clicking, like we gotta really be able to lock in. And I again, like I know we're gonna start getting into the week that was, because this was three basketball games in a week and all like incredibly eventful games, obviously. But um, I think like the idea that this team has a lot of pieces and come together, and in game after game, it's just so tough in this conference. But that this is a team that I think we're all painfully aware his record does not reflect the performances that they've put on the field this on the court this season, and some of that is reflecting of bad luck, and some of it's reflecting of absolutely dumpster fire officiating. But going forward, everyone ought to be able to look and be like, there are really good basketball players on this team. We obviously knew that, but there are a bunch of players, and you can fold Leach right into this, on this team who are capable of incandescent performances. And if you've got three of those guys going off in one game, let alone four, this team is right there. This team's capable of beating anyone in the conference.
What's kind of tough though, I mean, we had all four guys going, but only four guys scored. I mean, Martinelli, Leach, Barnheiser, and Barry, with the exception of Chiravino's 2 points.
Yeah, the other guy, he didn't hit the score sheet, but I want to call out Matty Nicholson because there's a theme here that goes along with what we were talking about with Barry earlier. Nicholson had that was a stress fracture in his foot last year. I can't exactly remember the injury, but obviously had that non-contact injury against Purdue, kind of running down the court, and then I guess not as obviously as Ty because you haven't seen the swings in production, et cetera, and he wasn't a big scorer for us last year. But I really feel like these last four games, the presence of Matt Nicholson has been so much more palpable, and a lot of that is on the defensive end in just his play. The last couple games, you've started to see him pack the score sheet. Tonight, 6 boards, 2 assists, 3 steals, 2 blocks, one emphatic block.
Yeah.
Right after the refs were like shouting at Chris Collins, I might add, after the ball bouncing off the dude's head and going out of bounds, and they still gave it back to Indiana. Anyways, last game against Michigan, Nicholson hit 16 rebounds. Against Maryland, he had 7 boards, contributed 5 points. So I feel like it has been the first 12 games of the season, Ty being up and down, not having his shot, not having his legs, Nicholson being up and down, not having his legs or his rhythm within the team. And you guys talked about how going forward, like, this team has a ton of parts and pieces that are working in concert, and I just love how they're coming together. And I still worry about how short the bench is. And Sam, you mentioned like 4 guys scored tonight. 4 guys had 30 plus minutes tonight. Nobody else had more than 7. But
well, I mean, Barry had 32 off the bench, but like the starting 5, had 30 plus. Yes,
yeah.
Chiravino started, but only played 7 minutes, which is
right.
About
he only had 7.
Bench,
yeah. Fitzmaurice only had 7. You're not seeing as much time as I would like from a Chiravino, a Mullins, a Wyndham. But then we played 10 guys tonight, and I don't know. So maybe we're going all right because we've got enough depth here, and you're seeing most of those guys get on the floor at some point. Mullins has been kind of surprisingly absent the last 3 or 4 games. Blakely getting some run. Fitzmaurice was out there because Hunger had been injured, banged up, foot issue, etc. So I still worry about the bench and the ability to contribute from those guys. They haven't gotten enough run. They haven't gotten enough minutes to get their comfort level. I watched the team struggling on the fast break against Indiana, and I'm thinking like, man, Mullins is so good on the fast break. So I just there's still stuff for this team to figure out, but you do start to feel like they're at full strength for the first time all year.
Yeah, I think the one other thing I would mention about Nicholson too, I mean, in giving kudos through him, is these last three games in this 3 game stretch, he has drawn all of the absolutely thankless work, which is basically having to guard Derek Queen, Vlad Golden, and then Umar Balo in 3 games. Those are three absolute mountains of humanity, and they're all capable of being really good basketball players, and it's just hard. And obviously, he was in more foul trouble in the Maryland game, but those are just tough assignments. That's just like banging. Like you're just having to work super hard at the defensive end and be the interior focal point.
While also being the guy that they use to, on that, what do they call it? The like they're trying to trap the the ball at the
Right.
top of the key, and he's a huge part of that, and then has to sync off of that to make sure he's sticking with the guy and not allowing the cut to the hoop, etc. So like, I feel like he's such an. It's not
Right.
just the banging. He's covering so much ground on defense as well.
Right. And I mean, and again, this is three big time impact players in the Big Ten. Like it's all like I know like Indiana fans are very trick or treat with Ballo right now. I think they're kind of tearing their hair out with him. But he was a massive recruit, I think, and is I think it's like getting massive NIL bucks to be at Indiana. And of course Golden like was a huge transfer for Michigan, and Queen is like this big time freshman phenom. Like these are all big marquee players that he's having to bang with. And again, like that's the thing. That's the conference. This is every game. And the other thing, the one other thing I'll say about this game before we go back, because it was punctuated at the very end.
Oh
is
my God.
poor Brooks, man.
Like
I mean,
talk about a guy who just leaves it all on the court. I mean, literally leaves it all on the court.
like literally leaves pieces of his face on the
Whether
court.
it's his two front teeth or going face first after a dunk. I mean, woof.
Oh, it was so bad, and it was he immediately sits up, and you can tell that he knows that it's bad, but he very much wants to minimize it because he wants Northwestern fans to be able to savor the moment, and for the team to be able to savor what's going on, and is very much trying to undersell what's going on while everyone is looking at it being like, oh, Brooks, that looks really bad, man.
Now he did. Collins did say in the post game that Brooks said it probably isn't too bad. He'll be sore tomorrow, but should be okay. So, but I mean, who can really say? If he comes out in the next game with a mask,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be 100% surprised.
I never saw a clean look. Was it his nose or his mouth?
It was his
that
nose.
bleeding?
He went like face
okay.
face first
His
into the
nose.
ground after like his hand slipped off the rim on the dunk, and like
Yeah.
it was.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, he
Yeah.
just broke his nose. Is what went into my head, and he's bleeding from the
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought too.
But he's bleeding profusely from the bridge of his nose, yeah. And he but to me, so I mean we sort of made a joke about it, not at his expense, but on Blue Sky, which is basically talking about like there's this guy's literally giving everything for this team right now. He's literally giving his face piece by piece for this team. But it's almost like, and again, like I very much want this to stop happening to this poor guy, but it at the same time it does symbolize like this is someone who gives absolutely everything for this basketball team, and almost like beyond that, someone who I I can't love Brooks more right now, not for just the way he acts on the court, but for the degree to which the way he conducts himself off the court and the degree to which he understands what's special about the Northwestern experience and talks about it. I think it was after the Maryland game. He was talking about how special it is that he's like all these people, all these fans that we see in the stands, like this is a really tight knit place. We see them all in class, like we know them and everything. And it's like, yes, man, that's what I wish everyone would understand about this place. And he just knows it and gets it. And then, we always come back to him pulling Dylan from the Wild Side aside at the end of last season and just sharing a moment with him and just being like, hey, we thank you so much for what you guys do and everything. I'm just like, he is just the consummate Northwestern guy. I mean, he does everything you want on the court. He does everything you want off the court. Like we love you, dude.
It's ironic he made that comment after the Maryland game, which was preceded by rumors
Yeah,
of
right.
him being in a boot, and then one of was it Inside NU or the Daily's reporters
it was the Daily.
dropping the hammer on Twitter and saying, "Dude, like I saw him this morning in class. Like he's not in a boot. I don't know what to tell you."
Yeah, right. Exactly. That was, well, I'll tell you, maybe that can tee us up, Sammy, to get in the Wayback Machine, or at least like 1 week back, and maybe go through the two games that led us up to this Indiana game.
Whether or not we talked about the Michigan State game or not, I want to leave that be. But we had the two overtime games, the win against Maryland and the loss against Michigan, where we did have two instances where we could play. How did the refs fuck us this time?
Jesus. I can't we'll get. I'm gonna hold myself back on that one.
Let me start it here, because no refereeing is ever perfect. Teams get calls. It really feels, and like, so tonight, like Northwestern benefited from a borderline goaltend call against Ballo. Sure, there are fouls here and there. I'm remembering at the end of the whether it was the Purdue game or the Maryland game, I'm remembering some drives that Brooks had that looked like kind of borderline. Purdue was rough because it was so lopsided. But what is so frustrating, it feels like Northwestern gets a disproportionate share of like egregiously screwed up calls. Like tonight, the ball bounced off the dude's face. Yeah. It bounced off of who was it?
Was it Goody's face? I don't know who
Goody's
it was.
Face. Yeah. Bounced off Goody's forehead and goes out of bounds. And like it an egregious missed call. And this just seems to happen over and over and over to us. It is, yeah. and Collins got hot, and then the ref is screaming at him, "Sit down, sit down, sit down." I'm like clearly there is I feel like Collins is a respected coach. I don't feel like there's been a narrative or a talk track or an undercurrent of him being like disliked by the refs or whatever, but maybe there is, because it feels like this is starting to become like a situation with some animus.
If Northwestern goes on the road, the average Northwestern fan feels at this point that there is a high likelihood Northwestern will get absolutely jobbed. And look, I'm not here to bitch about officiating, but I'm not here to gaslight anyone either and pretend like Northwestern shouldn't be 4-3 in the conference right now. Like, what are we talking about? Like, this is, and like the notion of, and all due respect, I think it was maybe Inside NU or some put up like an article that's like officiating aside, Northwestern has to find ways to win games. And I'm like, look, that's true in like a general sense, but Northwestern got straight up screwed out of two games on the road. Northwestern should have won, including the game that immediately preceded the Indiana game. And make no mistake, Northwestern was screwed out of winning that game. We went to overtime on the road against a ranked team in a situation where late in the game, free throw shooting kind of doomed us a little bit. Sure would have been great to have our 86% free throw shooter on the court, who, by the way, was by far Northwestern's best player in the game. Jalen Leach was having his game of the season, probably the game of his basketball career, on the road at Michigan, and for just an absolute dumpster fire of a flagrant 2, he's thrown out of the game. A situation where Vlad Golden, who's 7'2", has who knows how many inches on him and Lord knows how many pounds, is in a moving screen that Leach is just trying to get through. Incidental contact, and they're like hit to the groin.
Knocks him off balance.
Right. It's like, and Golden, who at the same time was like being like he's putting on a show the whole game, like a clown show. And I don't mean like in performance, but this guy is all like cartoon smiles and like playing like the wrestling heel half the game and everything. He makes this big exaggerated motion. It was all, and again, like Golden, like whatever, sell what you can sell. And the dude shot the lights out from three amazingly in the game. But like the just the it's just embarrassing. It's an embarrassing display of officiating. And to come out of a situation where we were joking, the pod before this, the title of the pod was it Trouble with the Penguins?
Zebras.
Like literally Trouble with the Zebras. Like literally this is the theme. It's been such the theme that the last pod was titled to talk about it. And then for this to happen. And it's just like we talked about just how egregious in so many ways the Penn State game was. And it's like talking about breaks of the game, Iowa was breaks of the game. That's what breaks of the game is. Breaks of the game is you do a bunch of knockdown dragouts all season with the expectation that sometimes you're going to get your heart ripped out by what the other team is capable of doing. Like when Iowa hits a crazy buzzer beater that would deprive you of a major road victory. That's breaks of the game. Getting screwed out of two games you should have gotten to win on the road because of travesty officiating is something else entirely. And it just sucks because like we're sitting here right now with a team that should be 4-3 in the Big Ten with two more road wins than they have, and they don't. And to be like, well, I guess they got to move on. Yeah, they do just have to move on, and that sucks. But I'm not going to sit here and pretend like there's something more we should have done in those games. This is an imperfect basketball team in an awesome conference where every friggin' game's going to be like this. And it's not excusable for the officiating to be that gross that it's taking games away from you like that. And it's happened to us twice.
I think you mean we should be 5-3 in conference,
14
and 5 overall.
Right.
Yeah, it's brutal, and it every team has bad luck at some point, but it's the egregious nature. Like that Penn State game was ass over tea kettle.
Yep.
And then not just the foul disparity, but what happened down the stretch with just like, oh, we blew an errant whistle, and then we decided that no, that that shot that you had didn't count because we happened to blow an errant whistle, even though you caught the ball and reacted in the moment, and it's like the letter of the law, and not taking any context or intent or anything else into context, right? And like the groin shot that happened last year with Langborg against
right.
Rutgers was bullshit too.
Right. And it's just like that's the thing, like for it to happen twice to us. I know.
The goaltend against Gonzaga. Now I'm going way back machine, right? But like it's these egregious mistakes by the referees that I again, there's no evidence to this. What it feels like as a fan is, well, it's Northwestern. Like you guys were going to win it all. It doesn't matter, Like you just swallow that and deal with it. We screwed up, but like Northwestern doesn't garner the respect or the benefit of the doubt. But, no, sorry guys, let's make it right. And that's what stings the most and kind of really pisses me off as a fan. I mean, there's a long-standing joke, in amongst those of us from the late 90s with football of like, whoever the opponent, whatever the situation, like
right.
Penalty Northwestern, first down Michigan, right?
Right. Kane Coulter's never getting the first down. Right.
Yeah, exactly. And sure, this is a little guy problem that maybe we're complaining about, but it's the egregiousness which that just puts me over the edge.
Right. And then Collins, like, I mean, to your point earlier where you were like, I'm not sure, like what could have happened. I mean, I think a lot of people point to the Purdue game last year on the road against Purdue, which we've talked about before. But then you get this situation where it's like Collins is hot and the ref's coming up to him being like, you need to like quiet down, you need to go on the sideline. And it's like the ref being like, you just screwed us out of the game. And I'm doing everything possible. And to be fair too, screwed us out of the game. It's let's not penalize, like, do not disrespect this Northwestern team and say that, like, well, it didn't really screw him out of the game because look how close it was down the stretch. Yeah, because the team absolutely dug down minus their hottest player to send this game to overtime because that's the heart of the team. The way to think about it is if that team that had that effort would have had its best player that night, the game doesn't go to friggin' overtime. The Cats win. And again, just for Collins to be then to told like you need to shut up and stomach this, I'm like, look, the days of Chris Collins getting ejected from Purdue, that's way in the rearview mirror. Right now, this is Chris Collins trying his best to keep his composure as the refs take wins away from his basketball team. Yeah. And again, we're all behind him.
It's the moment tonight is the moment that really stood out to me where, I mean, they catch it on the sideline where the ref is walking back towards Collins and you can see him saying, sit down. And he looks irate. And in my head, I'm thinking like, shit, Bill Carmody got thrown out of more games than I've seen Chris Collins get thrown out of. And it's not like every coach at some point loses their cool. And I don't know, maybe he pissed them off at some point. Maybe they're mad at his dad for shitting on them in various broadcasts. I don't know what the story is, but like at a certain point, like the fidelity of the game has got to trump that shit.
Oh, exactly. That's the thing. Like, okay, Chris Collins shouldn't be yelling at you. The league office should be. Someone should be like, these are deciding basketball games. This is incompetent deciding basketball games. Like, someone's going to read you the riot act. Who do you want it to be? If it's not going to be the coach, that's fine. But like, yeah, to your point, like the integrity of the conference, like this has to get straightened out. It's ridiculous. And again, Northwestern would be riding a 3-game winning streak right now with, all major wins. They would have taken a win over a ranked Michigan team on the road out of that. And overall, had these games been properly officiated, they'd have a winning record in the Big Ten right now. So, I mean, we're pissed. And, like, of course we're venting about it. We know you all feel the same way. And, but it just is what it is. Like this, we know this is not a perfect basketball team. We know they have their warts. We know they have their problems. But the fact of the matter is, this is an 8-team absolute juggernaut of a basketball conference, and this team should have a winning record in it. And that's just the way it is.
Cynical of me to think that, watching the game tonight is like, at least we're winning in such a way that the refs can't screw us because...
well, right after that, like, and I alluded to it earlier, but right after the ref screamed at Collins about sitting down, like, Nicholson, like, mega blocks the ensuing, shot that Indiana takes, and then Barry goes down and absolutely drains a 3, and then I think Leach went on his run right after that, and so it was kind of like a no doubt, kind of moment of just taking matters into your own hands, etc. But like, we all know that that's not
right
how it goes every night. And to expect it to go that way is not, the way it works. But at the same time, like, don't let a game come down to a single call. Like, sure, I get it.
I get it.
But be better, etc., etc. But it's the every team loses borderline calls. It happens to everybody, and I get it. And it is what it is.
Right.
Like, the total screw jobs, though, always seem to fall on our shoulders.
Yeah. And the whole, don't let it get, like, to your point, that is a well-worn cliche, right? Like, don't let it come down to one possession. That's the friggin' Big Ten in 2025. I don't know what to tell you. That's every single game in this conference is like that.
Yeah.
Like, they showed some stat, was it during the Michigan game, that just that week, just that day, I think, 3 games had gone to overtime, and the 4th game was a 3-point game. Like, that's the conference. Like, you can't be throwing up like just trash like this from an officiating standpoint and have it determining all these close games. But yeah, anyway, I'm glad we were able to have our vent session on the Michigan game, because that was a game that this team deserved to win.
Briefly, the Maryland game also went to overtime. John, you were in the house.
Briefly, if we had to sum it up in one moment, what would that moment be?
Oh, Nicky Buckets, baby.
Oh, Nicky. What a shot. And yeah, that was, so I think, a lot of you are probably aware of this because we've given away a bunch of tickets for various, promotions this season. And that's because we have a pair of tickets in the building. that we just have far too few chances to use this season. And that's just because Sam is way down in Beverly and I work nights and weekends, and it's just so hard for us to find time. And that's a bummer because it means, like, for example, we miss a game like tonight, which Sam and I would have loved to have been at. And of course, Scuzz would too. But I was able to go to that Maryland game. And every time, we've talked about this before, anytime I go in that building, I am just like, find me a better basketball stadium in the country. It's perfect. It is such an unbelievable atmosphere, and yet it's also accessible. And all we do when we go there is just go and meet like all the student journalists working the game. We always go and talk to Matt Shelton. We always talk to like the WNUR people who are broadcasting the game. Sometimes we'll talk to Dave Ennett. We'll go talk to the Wild Side people. We'll talk to any of the Inside NU people who happen to be there. We'll talk to everybody, and then plus all of like, like I'll wear like a Westlaw Pirates shirt, and people will meet us in like the halls and be like, "Oh, Westlaw Pirates," and they want to talk to us about it and everything. It's phenomenal. And as Scuzz mentioned earlier, hilariously, like the um, the whole talking point of the day was this situation where it was like someone just absolutely dying on the hill that was Brooks is hurt and potentially out for the season. And so that was all anyone was talking about before the game, and it was but it was just a ton of awesome conversations. And at a game like that, and then Gary Gillen, friend of the pod, was there. So that's kind of where I ended up setting up camp, not even at our seats, because Gary had a spot at one of those tables kind of right on the outer concourse that overlooked the court from, oh, I don't even know. I get so turned around in that building, either the north end zone, I mean the behind the west bucket, I guess. But I get so turned around east west inside that building. But whichever end Brooks hit, I mean, whichever end Nicky Buckets hit the shot at,
that's the west side.
That's the end. That's the west. So that's where we were. And the whole second half, I was with Gary watching from that angle. And we all know how much of a nerve wracker that was, and the Cats having the lead and then giving it away. And Maryland's got a couple of guys who are just unbelievable at getting to the rack, and Reese, being the biggest one, was just getting to the tin again and again and again. And they erased that lead and came back. And it went to overtime. And then in overtime, there was that whole moment where we were watching and they're reviewing to try to decide how much time there is on the clock. And something I just had a little bell go off in my head that's like, you better film this because you just never know. Something might happen. And I was like, all right, let me go to the left and get a little bit of clear daylight and put my phone up. And with the exception of when Sam and I got to film at mid-court of Purdue 1, I filmed the greatest thing I've ever seen in that building, which is Nicky Buckets hitting that three. I mean, that shot to win it at the buzzer. It was absolutely fantastic.
It was so needed. I like just in that moment, just the relief of, oh, finally. Mm-hmm. And what's funny is that Northwestern is like Michigan was the first OT game we've lost this year. We were 3-0 in OT before Michigan. So my memories are like obviously a little fuzzy here, but I feel like after Penn State, after Purdue, after Michigan State, and Barnheiser going cold, like that Maryland game was a must-win game. It was a quad one opportunity. It was a must-win for the hopes and goals of this team, and they just needed one of these late game situations to go their way, and it finally did. And it's a place to build from. And you saw how they came out on fire against Michigan, like should have won that game, and they came out and took care of business tonight. And now we get some, the next stretch here. I talked about it, I think on our last podcast, that like 7 of the next 8 were at home, and the next 3 games are all home games. I'm sorry, we have a road game against Illinois and then 3 home games. So on the road in 4 days at Illinois, it's going to be hella tough. It always is down there. And then Rutgers, a ranked Wisconsin, and a USC team coming to Welsh Ryan. And at least one of those is a huge opportunity for the team to notch another big win, maybe 2 of them. And like, this feels like a critical pivot point. And as we get into February and the stretch run for the season. So hopefully they can do what they need to do here.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the game against Illinois coming up this weekend. Then we've got Rutgers, Wisconsin, and Southern Cal coming up. Boom, boom, boom. Games that we need to take care of business in our barn, and we've done a really, really good job of doing that all season long. Past couple of years, we've just been lights out at home, which is what you need to do in this conference. And then you need to be able to go on the road and take one or two here and there. Our road trip out west, Washington, Oregon, coming up after the Southern Cal home game as we get into the first week or two of February. But definitely. Yeah,
11-1 at home thus far this year.
One other thing that I wanted to mention, multiple people talked about. Credit to Louis Vaquer and Wildcat Report for pointing out that this was a possibility going into the game. We've won 5 straight games against the Indiana Hoosiers. If I could remind, we were
first
joking.
time since the 1910s.
Yeah, we were joking about it on Blue Sky, but it's like we were there for the Hoosier Daddy stuff. I was there when Bobby Knight walked out and handed me candy and I threw it back to him. I've stared into those death eyes, face to face.
Sadly, we never won any of those games.
Yeah, right, exactly. And if you could go back and tell me in those moments that we were going to someday win 5 and counting against Indiana, I would have been like, I can't even believe that. But here we are.
I don't want to go back and tell you, John.
Yeah,
I want to go back and tell Bobby Knight.
Bobby Knight. Yeah, exactly.
Bobby Knight, we're going to win 5 in a row from you.
Yeah, exactly. So, but it's truly incredible. I mean, the Cats absolutely own Indiana right now, and some might say have a pretty good slice of Purdue also. So it's an incredible place to be.
Anything else to mention on hoops?
Just a lot of work still to be done, right? If this team wants to make the postseason, so they're 12-7 now, they got to get, they got to win as many of these big opportunities as they can. They get, Illinois is ranked, Wisconsin's ranked. They have a game at Oregon, who is ranked. I think Ohio State would count as a quad 1 right now. They get Maryland again at the very end of the season. They don't have many other opportunities. UCLA could potentially, USC could potentially float up as bigger opportunity wins down the road. They play Iowa, who's right next to them in the standings at the moment. So the path to the promised land that we're hoping, 3 years in a row is what we're hoping for. It looks a bit long right now, but it's not out of the realm of possibility, and they just got to keep taking care of business.
Yeah, absolutely. Like we say, work's cut out, and what's tough is you can't finish in the bottom of the conference this year because not everyone makes the Big Ten tournament.
Yeah,
right. I'm very
so the bottom 3 teams.
The bottom 3 get axed, and it's a 15-team
Yep.
Big Ten tournament.
I definitely, I guess I would say here's where my mind is. Like everyone else, I want this tourney streak to continue. I really, really want it to continue. I'm also very conscious of the extent to which a team like this would be an absolute nightmare for any team in the NIT. And I'm not saying that to be dismissive of the NCAA tournament. Obviously, that's what we all want. But this is a team that is absolutely tough as nails and is going to just drag out the rest of this basketball season, and hopefully we get the resume that puts us into the tournament. But I am very confident that this team's going to put the resume together of a team that is just nothing but toughness and pedigree and is going to be loaded for bear in any postseason basketball situation. So we're hoping for the best, but again, we know what this team's about. We know what their record should be, and we know how they're going to keep playing.
I guess the one last note I mentioned on our last pod, I was planning to go to the Northwestern game at Minnesota in late February. That is no longer going to happen. It's a bad weekend for my fam, so we'll not be there for that. But there's hope for next year.
And hopefully, hopefully we will find ways between Sam and me and or Scuzz to get out to a couple more of these games. If we can go, we'll go. And if not, we're going to keep doing what we've tried to do all season, which is try to find ways to put tickets in the hands of deserving fans and people who we know are going to go there and show out for the Cats.
If you or a loved one is seriously injured by someone else's negligence, hire Kent Simpson of the Simpson Law Group. After over a decade prosecuting murder cases in Chicago, Simpson opened his own firm focused on wrongful death and personal injury cases. He specializes in car, truck, motorcycle, boat, and other transportation accidents, as well as construction accidents, medical negligence, slip and falls, product liability, and more. Millions recovered for clients. No fee unless he wins. The Simpson Law Group. Compassion, empathy, and vigorous advocacy. Go to simpsonlawgroup.com or call 312-332-2107 for a free consultation. And go Cats. We can put a bow on the end of college football season. Ohio State is your national champion, knocking off Notre Dame in the national championship game this past weekend. We don't need to go deep into this game, but like
Rod Hurd's solo tackle was not enough to win the game for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish.
But I mean,
I don't know how closely you guys watched this.
Pretty close, yeah.
I will cop to the last month and a half of my life has been very Notre Dame dominated, and I've talked about having married into a Notre Dame family. My kids have all been sucked into that world. Try as I might, they have shared allegiances right now, but it's too much fun with all their cousins and everything else. It is what it is. I'm at peace with it, but this playoff was pretty exciting, and it's being the holidays and everything else. The family's together a ton, and this became pretty much a theme of like from Thanksgiving through this past weekend, and it was pretty cool to see. And I will say, like, the national championship game in and of itself gave me a lot of 2018 Big Ten championship vibes, in that, I mean, like, Notre Dame never quite threatened truly to take the game, but they put the fear of God into Ohio State briefly at the beginning of that fourth quarter. We're midway through, and you could feel the sphincters tightening. You could see Ohio State go hyper conservative on offense, and it was it just represented a very exciting finish to what was a very exciting playoff, even though there were a handful of blowout games. I feel like in general, like, sure, there's a lot of things that the playoff could do better, different, etc. But like, my God, what an entertaining product! It's no wonder that they make a gajillion dollars on this, and will only continue to make more money as we go forward.
It's funny too, just because you very much feel like there's this demarcation line, right? Where, to your point, right? Like, the money, but the whole nature of Ohio State's run has a way of being like, we are in a totally different world than we were before. Because, on one hand, it's super easy to be like, Ohio State never wins a national title in this season, and probably Ryan Day gets fired at the end of the regular season when there's no path for Ohio State to the national championship, and they've just lost to their rival Michigan for the fourth year in a row. But then on the other hand, no team has remotely had as hard a path to the title as Ohio State did this season. They have like top five. Like, their resume from a wins perspective obliterates anyone else's resume. It's nothing but the other best teams in the country. And they just went through all of them to win the title. So, I mean, it very much is like the old world is dead and buried. This is the new world. This is what it's going to be like. That $20 million price tag that you've seen bandied about so much, that's going to become standard, to say the least.
Seems like a pretty good ROI.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Right. That's the way that it's going to be. And like that's, you love it or hate it, but I think most people are going to come around to it. And even someone like me who's like I think like from an instinctive perspective, I didn't particularly like the idea of like a 2-loss Ohio State team being able to get it together so late. But you know what? That's what basketball's like. And you know what? In this model, Boise State got in, and Indiana got in, and SMU got in, and the rest of it is wrinkles that they're going to iron out. Like I just feel like this is, this is where we are. And to Scuz's point, like it doesn't seem like a bad place to be.
When like the Boise State got in and the Indiana got in piece of it, I think what's important about that is for what year is it? Since 1998, for 23 years, the mantra has been, or 25 years, I can't do math, 27 years, I don't fucking know. The mantra has been prove it on the field. And you finally got to do that in a really comprehensive way this year. And I love the unique history of college football where you have these weird split titles in these strange years where, it's unclear who the best team is because they haven't played each other. And I love that because it's unique and it's different and it stands out amongst all the sports. But I can also totally understand why that feels unsatisfying and even weird or wrong in some of those years. Like I forget the year off the top of my head, but
I can give you an exact example of this. The 1990
you know what I'm talking about.
1990 Colorado Georgia Tech split national champion. The Michigan Nebraska.
Yeah, I was thinking of the Michigan Nebraska split. Yeah, which was another really terrible one because it's just basically like, Tom Osborne's retiring, give him another national championship. So like there were problems with that, and now when you look back on that, it's got this nostalgia, this wasn't it great win? But I think the reality is this is so much more entertaining, and it is great to see all these teams get a shot, and it's not just like I don't think Notre Dame would have had a shot. Given the loss to NIU being, arguably the single worst loss among all the teams that made the playoff field. And there's an argument argument's the wrong term. I guess like you can look at like, did you have a perfect season? That's how we used to award the national championship in college football. So like national championship maybe isn't even the right term. It's who had the most perfect season. Very subjective. Well, now you can have a mulligan. A team like Ohio State can screw up, and they screwed up big time against Michigan. There's no reason they should have lost that game. It's game plan. It was, not owning the moment effectively, not adapting in the moment effectively, and a Michigan team out executing them.
It was also
in
too
the muck.
like, that's been lost in this a little bit. It was also a Michigan team that had been really bad earlier in the season, starting to play significantly better football.
Yeah, got a lot better. Yeah, kind of figured it out a little bit. And a supremely talented Michigan team, right? Like one lacking a lot of talent at quarterback,
Elsewhere,
but having
exactly.
a ton of talent elsewhere. O-line, D-line, wide receiver, et cetera. Or running back, et cetera. But point being, like, there's an argument that this new format allows the best teams the opportunity to play like the best teams. And I don't know. Again, I think there's some obvious tweaks and changes that they make, and I like all the quibbles that I may have. I can't argue with the truth that this is.
Yeah, I mean you
entertaining.
can quibble with like the seedings and kind of who gets buys and that's something that can be tweaked down the road. But like to be able to get that many teams in the action, with the opportunity. Yeah, I mean, was Boise State overmatched? Probably, yeah. But they had a chance to prove it on the field. And that's all we were asking. SMU, perfect example. Like, this is a team that would have had no shot ever. And, they had the chance to go. And, yeah, it's not often that, you get a 16 over a 1 seed. That's happened twice in the history of the basketball tournament, right? And that's probably going to be how it goes in the football tournament as well. But any given Sunday, right? Any given Saturday, one team can go and knock off another. You put a perfect game plan together, and it can happen. And will it happen often? Probably not. But like, at least if you're an SMU fan, you had the opportunity to play on the field, to get out there and freeze your butts off at Penn State. But you got to take a bite of the apple, right? And like, that just has never existed before. It's always been like, you get your bowl game, and that's all well and good, and you have one fun trip, and then that's the end of it. And now everyone's opting out, and blah 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 blah. But like, you get more teams in there, and that's just made for a lot of fun, at least for me.
More teams will create more opportunity for more players too, and I like the potential for movement and the potential for NIL. And yes, like, Ohio State is going to always have more in the war chest than SMU, but that doesn't mean that SMU can't afford some players and can't give some guys a shot. And I think, when you look at the 4-team playoff over the last however many years, and it was, how many times was it Alabama and Georgia and Ohio State and Clemson? I mean, like, the vast majority of the time, it was those teams. It was never. It was like, once Cincinnati got in, did Boise ever? I don't think so. So like it became you were picking from just a subset of teams, and that certainly had a trickle down effect to player movement, etc. And with the advent of the portal and NIL, and now the expanded playoff, you are going to see a dramatically different situation. And I think it's there are some negatives, and there's some things that some genies that don't go back in the bottle. But I think it's going to be exciting, and it affords a lot of opportunity for players and schools and fan bases, and that's a pretty cool place to be.
I think too, for anyone who is saying you're going to lose a lot of the classic magic of a college football season in this new system, I would direct you to a couple of emails we got from friend of the pod, Mike Hayes, who, a lot of you know Mike, but Mike made the great point that there are no shortage of parallels between this 2024 Notre Dame season and the 1995 Northwestern season. There are obvious differences. Of course, Notre Dame had a lot of pedigree coming into this season. Of course, Northwestern had none coming into that season. But there are also a lot of made the point that Notre Dame went on the road to a big power in Texas A&M to start the season, whereas Northwestern went on the road to Notre Dame to start the season. Both teams earned a massive win, and then both teams immediately biffed it against a MAC team right after that, and then rallied and didn't lose again the rest of the way. And his parallels even extended all the way into Northwestern's bowl game, the Rose Bowl versus Notre Dame versus Ohio State, the national title, pointing out both teams were down 24-7 at one point. Both teams doinked a field goal, and that was kind of like sort of a little bit of the last straw for both teams, is when they both put a field goal off the upright. But nonetheless, both
near miss on a special teams
right
trick play.
Right.
Gary Barnett calls the onside kick in the fourth quarter and just misses it.
Exactly. And both teams still kind of came back and made it a little bit of a game before it got away from them at the end. Of course, Northwestern briefly took the lead, but it was interesting. It's just a lot of parallels. And of course, all of us, we all throw up a little bit in our mouths when anytime Notre Dame and Northwestern are compared, but the point still stands, right? And of course, the thing that makes the comparison so juicy is that big part of Northwestern's season was defined by a win over Notre Dame. So thanks, Mike, for sending that. But it does prove the point. It's like, in this new world with millions of NIL dollars and an expanded playoff and like a whole new way of doing things, you're not going to lose the magic of what makes college football great. You're still going to have all the great pieces, and you're still going to have classic runs just like that. And, the game will go on.
Well, this year's regular season was a testament to that. I distinctly remember thinking as we were coming into this year with the expanded playoff, like, oh, teams can lose now, and it's going to mean games aren't as big. Like, that Michigan-Ohio State game did not lack for any pop, even though, you knew even if Ohio State lost, they were going to be in the playoff field, but the stakes still felt enormous, and they will feel the same way next year. Like when Ohio State played Penn State, when Alabama played Georgia, like all those things still had so much weight and energy, and that's that does kind of reinforce the notion that this is an exclamation point on the season, and it doesn't take away or detract or devalue the regular season, which should always have, which should always be paramount in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see. I know the ACC has already started to make a little bit of noise about changing their conference championship, kind of the way that works. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how these conferences navigate with the 12-team playoff. And, well, I mean, it's 12 right now. It will be 16 very, very soon.
Right.
I mean, let's.
Yeah,
it's going to be 16,
14 for next year.
It's going to be,
which I guess would be like an NFL model, right? The one seeds get a bye and everybody else is playing. But
it's going to be 16 teams, and 8 of them are going to be hosting football games to start. That's where we're headed.
All it's going to have to take next year, like say they go to 14, then the ones get upset, or the 1 and the 2 get upset because they haven't played in a week, and
Yeah.
But I don't know. We'll see.
Any last thoughts before we get out of here tonight, guys?
One thing I'll say, I'm not going to get into it too deeply. You noticed we mentioned Blue Sky a couple times earlier in this pod. We've mentioned before that we had created a Blue Sky account. We are doing everything we can to push all of our effort into that account. We're not abandoning the other platform completely, much as we'd like to, and frankly, much as a lot of you would like to too. But we are really trying to raise the pirate flag over at Blue Sky. Make the sky purple over there, if you will, and provide a face in terms of our account, which we've put a lot of work into over the years, that a lot of you just know, and that people who are migrating over to Blue Sky and looking to find that Northwestern feel and to find that Northwestern family, that like we can be a face over there for them that they can see when they arrive, and make it feel like home for them. So you're going to see a lot of us from there on that platform. We really encourage you to create an account, and hopefully maybe we can find ways to incentivize you to do that if you haven't down the road. But create an account, get on there. A ton of your people are on there. A bunch of your Northwestern families on there, and we're on there. So come join us.
Well, with that, we'll go ahead and leave it there for tonight. Head to our website, westlawpirates.com, where you can leave comments and questions. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram, the whole 9 yards, YouTube. Share, like, subscribe our videos there. That'd be great. You can always email the show, westlawpirates@gmail.com. Tune in next time as we give our visceral and statistical views on Northwestern athletics. And look for us in the west lot of Ryan Field flying the red pirate flag, because we give no quarter, especially the fourth. John Lacombe and Eric Skasby, I'm Sam Walter. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you next time.